And it's the beginning of another working week. Welcome to 55 minutes around the world of business. Here's what's coming to you in the next 55 minutes. In Ibadan, or your state capital, the cost of living protest is going on, and youth especially expressing the hardship they feel. Still in Nigeria, Fitch is warning of FX liquidity following the series of updates by CBN. And Zimbabwe says it is ready to sell water to South Africa. Welcome to the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We'll start from the global space, telling you what's going on with oil prices. It fell as investors' attention returned to the demand outlook after reports of higher producer prices in the U.S., which is the world's biggest oil user, stoked worries that sticky inflation and higher interest rates would limit fuel consumption growth. Brent crude futures were down 61 cents, that's about 0.7% at $82.86 a barrel. Well, the March contract for U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude, which expires tomorrow, Tuesday, was 41 cents down. That's 0.5% lower at $78.78 a barrel. The WTI April contract was down also 0.8%. That's about 60 cents to $77.86 a barrel. Both Brent and WTI contracts held settled higher on Friday as geopolitical tensions in the Middle East offset slowing demand forecasts from the International Energy Agency. U.S. producer prices increased more than expected in January amid strong gains in the cost of services, which could amplify inflation worries. Markets are also yet to see the direction of demand from China after that country returns from a week-long Lunar New Year holiday, while President's Day in the United States is set to keep trade relatively muted. Moreover, Federal Reserve policymakers on Friday signaled patience towards interest rate cuts. Higher rates keep up the cost of buying oil, providing for a bearish market trend. Over the weekend, tension in the Middle East continued as Israeli raids put the Gaza Strip's second largest hospital out of service, and Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthi fighters claimed responsibility for an attack on an India-bound oil tanker. In the metals market, gold prices rose to a nearly one-week high on Monday as a slight pullback in the United States dollar and escalating tensions in the Middle East lifted bullion's safe haven appeal. Spot gold was up 0.3% to $2,019.99 per ounce, hitting its highest since February the 13th. U.S. gold futures rose 0.4% to $2,031.50 per ounce. A UK-registered cargo ship reported being under attack in the Bab al-Mandab Strait off Yemen, and that happened yesterday, Sunday, while UK Maritime Trade Operations Agency reports crew abandoning a ship off Yemen after an explosion. The dollar index was down 0.1%, making greenback-priced bullion more affordable to overseas buyers. Spot gold may rise into a range of $2,027 to $2,031 per ounce as it has climbed above a falling channel. And this is according to technical analysts following the matter. And market sentiment was also lifted after top consumer China resumed trade after that week-long Lunar New Year holidays. Spot platinum dipped 0.3% to $903.04. Palladium rose 0.7% to $956.66, while silver fell 1.2% to $23.12 per ounce. We come to Nigeria, and it's still the high cost of living everywhere, every part of the country now. In Oyo State, Ibadan, the capital, youth there protesting the high cost of living, food inflation, and current economic hardship in the country. The nation observed, there were observants of placards carrying youth in the protests, and we can hear them singing right there, holding in Mokola area of Ibadan. That's the capital, and this happened this morning. Some of the placards have inscriptions such as end food hike, inflation, the poor is starving, and Tinubu, don't forget your promises, among others. And those are the youths, they're expressing themselves. A reflection of what is happening. We've had reports like this coming from Niger State. We've seen it from Kano State. So it's obviously not restricted to or your state, but this is the state of the Nigerian economy at this time. Well, as we said, it's not just your state. Now, that high cost of living experienced by Nigerians at this time obviously calls for serious collaboration between the government and the private sector. This, according to the Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems Limited, Dr. Yele Okeremi, is how to boost productivity and reduce the hardship which is being experienced. Dr. Okeremi was a guest on Business Morning earlier today.
The government and the private sector. There's a big gap, and until we have synergy. So what you see smart business people doing is actually finding a means of paying government to get out of the way for them. Whereas what should actually happen is to get government involved and propelling private sector. But one of the challenges I see, and I mean, look, it's not about this government or any, the fact is that government in Nigeria does not yet understand the language of productivity. So when I see government, many government agencies today are turning themselves to regulators, when ordinarily speaking, they should have been enhancement organizations. Where we are now, government agencies really need to roll up their sleeves and come and collaborate with the private sector and not put too many bombs. So that rather than they putting bombs slowing down private sector, what they should do is give the private sector a lot more fuel and create a very fair pathway so that they can go. The biggest challenge I see in the industry is market access. It's not about skill. So I hear government say they are going to train 5 million. You train 10 million people, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be doing crime? No. What I think we should do is let's identify productive organizations. They don't have to be many. Every nation does this. Identify some very productive, high-flying organizations, put fuel behind them, give them the kind of support that they need, allow them to grow very well, then use them as role models to create so many organizations. I mean, if you went to the United States today, you go and touch General Motors or General Electric, then you will see the full force of the United States.
All right, we're looking for a way out of that. One is what Dr. Okeremi said, which is more collaboration with, between the private and the public sector and encouraging the productivity through the private sector. Another one is closing leakages. That's another conversation that has also been going on as a way to solve the current high cost of living that the country is experiencing. And I think last year, we did hear Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, the chairman of Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, said that the country loses about $26 billion annually, to gaps in the tax system. Perhaps if those gaps are plugged and we had close to this 26 billion plowed back into the economy, perhaps it could do something. Well, let's see what others think about it, apart from Mr. Oyedele, with Mr. Eben Jules, who's the managing partner at Transact, and joins us here in the studio. Mr. Jules, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. So is this figure, does it look outrageous? Does it sound normal when Mr. Oyedele says that the country loses about $26 billion due to tax gaps in the tax system in the country?
Well, I think he may be looking at maybe the total pot of incentives given to companies in Nigeria. Maybe that is the total pot, not losses per se. Government it's like a chicken and egg approach, where government gives you incentives, they give you tax-free period. Take, for example, in the days when MTN and all the GSM companies came, they had tax-free periods during which they are expected to invest a lot in Nigeria. Some of the biggest companies in Nigeria enjoy such incentives. During the period when they are enjoying that incentive, you're supposed to see a quantum effect of their activities in how many people they are employing. So government may not have the cash, but the value that those companies are adding to the economy should suffice, should be more than the tax that the government is losing. But the issue is that most times these incentives may not be given to the right companies. And I think that is what we should focus on.
So let's focus there now. If you say they're not being given to the right companies, are you implying that it's not been as effective as it should be? Perhaps that is why Mr. Oyedele is also saying that that gap has cost us this much money.
Yes, that's also related to what the chairman of the FIRS said recently about the road construction tax credit scheme. Yeah, so they're not all as effective.
But a lot of people applaud that scheme, and it's supposed to help us close our infrastructural deficit.
Yes, but knowing Nigeria, knowing the corruption that runs in the system, and let's hope that it doesn't run in our DNA, which will become very, very dangerous for us as a people. How do you value the road that is being constructed by one company? A lot of subjectivity will come into that. And for a businessman that is less than honest, rather than paying 100 naira as taxes, for example, I can construct a 20 million naira road and claim 100 naira taxes, credits. And don't forget, that whole road infrastructure credit scheme is a bit dangerous because you can sell that credit to another company by simply saying, I have this tax credit for constructing this road. I'm selling it to you. So those are some of the things that makes these things
but would you say it's the business people now, or is it the system, the tax system, that should be transparent? Unfortunately, it's still human beings that are running.
Yeah. So the issue is we as a people. It's not so much as the tax system in itself. It's we Nigerians, is our mindset. I was just thinking the other day that a lot of us Nigerians go out and complain the federal government is not doing this. But beyond taxes that we pay as indirect taxes, I hope you and I know that we don't pay personal taxes to the federal government. We pay our personal taxes to the states in which we live. Now, I remember years ago, a Senate president in this country said his total tax for a year in his tax clearance certificate from his state was 88,000 naira. That was my own tax paid as a first level staff in the accounting firm where I was then. So you see a situation.
So what's wrong with the system there?
That's a big one. Fundamental issues. You take big federal systems like we have. Nigeria is supposed to be a federal system, and one of the biggest federal systems we can compare ourselves with will be the United States of America. There is a personal income tax that is payable to the center. That is payable, it may not be, in some instances, like in the case of the US, that is the main tax you pay. You pay your personal income taxes to the center. Based on that, the center then has data of everybody, has data of who underprivileged people are, and then make a cash refund to them based on the data that they have, that you submitted in your tax returns. But here we have a system where we don't have that kind of data at the center. And that is why you are still having the kind of monumental corruption we hear about at the ministry of the ministry that is supposed to be to take care of humanitarians and the less privileged.
Yeah, but I mean, I've spoken to a couple of stakeholders in the tax industry, and they talk a whole lot about the adoption of technology. Is it not widespread enough? Or is it still lip service?
No, technology adoption in Nigeria, tax-wise, is relatively nascent. You know what I mean? It's just in the last 3-4 years. And this is one of the areas where we should commend the Federal Inland Revenue Service, because they built, the current platform we are using. They built it themselves. Now, because taxes for states, the states have their own internal revenue service, and they are not all at the same level. Apart from the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, the level of standardization of operations of most internal revenue services across Nigeria is very rudimentary. Some of them, they are even worse than they were 10, 15 years ago. Because what's happened is, rather than professionalize the state internal revenue service, most states have politicians running the internal revenue services. So you have to marry these things.
So that's for state governors.
That is for states.
Perhaps.
But don't forget, I just told you that most people pay their taxes to the state.
Yes.
The people who pay their personal income taxes.
And it's still at that state that we have the complaints of multiple taxation.
Yes, because the personal income tax scheme is fairly not standardized in the way they apply them in those states, in some of those states. They resort to crude tactics, paying attention to taxes that maybe ultimately doesn't contribute as much to the bottom line, but it's easier to collect for them by using the same thugs that help them win elections. So you just...
So I mean, it just sounds like perhaps the country is not even ready to clean up its tax system.
It's a work in progress. The country the Nigerians are not isolated from Nigeria, so it's a work in progress. As we fix the country, the tax system will be getting fixed, because there's a lot of things I tell tax administrators and people who who are saddled with increasing tax collection in any system. Tax is ultimately a trust business. It's based on trust. If the citizens don't trust you, they're not going to be willing to pay taxes.
Maybe that's where to start from, because if you talk to 10 Nigerians, I bet 9 of them will tell you they don't trust the system. We've been paying taxes and we don't see what it's doing. We still have to, communities on a state have to come together to work on their roads, provide power, and all of that. So perhaps it is for the government to win the trust of the people first.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a work in progress. That as we start fixing Nigeria...
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. As we start fixing Nigeria...
Sorry, I just want to know, is there a work in progress? Or we just say it's a work in progress?
I want to believe so. I want to believe so.
Any signs of that?
Well, I'd rather repeat the words of the managing partner of one of the big firms in those days, who said, based on the laws of statistics, that with our population, in another 75 years or thereabout, Nigeria will have more human beings living in it than any other country in the world apart from China and India. We'll be close to 1 billion people. So somehow, we should be able to have a critical mass of people, 1 or 2 more people who are thinking in the right direction that will push us.
How would you assess the work so far of Mr. Oyedele's committee?
Well, I think he's, first of all, we've worked together in the past, so,
so you're going to answer based on sentiment?
So that is why I'm trying to be careful to say, okay, do I answer you this way? And you will say, am I trying
just
to...
objective.
Or am I
follow
being,
the data?
So I think the first thing is he's done a lot more sensitization on, what tax is, and more people are aware of taxes. He's done a lot, especially in the selection of university students as part of his committee. He did a lot of sensitization. But the impact of the work of his committee, we're going to be waiting to see it. It's going to take time for us to see it. It may not be as immediate. I don't know how widely he has consulted, but I believe that that is why they chose him. I also know that he's someone who puts in time to whatever he's committed to doing. He puts in the time. So I hope that he comes out well. But we are all waiting.
The focus, even the advice from the Bretton Woods institutions is expand the tax net, even though they say our taxes are really low and all of that. But I mean, that expansion of that tax net, obviously we need trust on the one hand, and on the other hand, we need technology.
No doubt. You're correct. But the trust part, is the harder part, and because it's easier to destroy trust than to build it, as they say. And trust that has been constantly abused since 1999, and some people will say, since 1960, and some people will even say since 1914. For Nigerians, there's been no government that has built the trust that it should have, which is people. I'll give you one last example, because I was thinking about it and I was like, even the developed countries, who have all the resources and say they are capitalists, there's something they don't take for granted. The old and the young ones, So you get to a country where you have to pay for health. But when it comes to young kids And when it comes to people who are 60 or 65 and above, the state takes care of them. The elderly people's homes in America, for example, or senior living facilities, as they call them, is one of the highest employers of labor. And it's actually one of the highest employers of our own people that are emigrating. We don't even have that here. We leave our own old people, right, to be taken care of by relatives. But we've forgotten that there's been a change in demography. In the last few years, we don't have as much committed young people going back to the village to take care of their old ones. You know, and that whole industry is something that, should we decide to say, okay, as a national strategy, we're going to you start building trust. That is one. Two, is a whole industry that has a tendency to employ a whole lot of people across the 700. And you're not sharing money to people at humanitarian aid. People are actually having facilities where they are taking their sick old ones too. And the state is paying for that everywhere in the world. You know, even for states that are not communist, they are not socialist, they're capitalist countries. You know, so those are small things that the government can do to build trust. I think the government should do some of those low-hanging fruits, start building trust. The tax net will naturally increase.
Wow. Okay. We'll see if the government will adopt that strategy to expand the tax number. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Iben Joels, the managing partner at Stransact.
Thank you.
Let's take a break. When we come back from the break, we'll head to the markets, and we have a whole lot of stories awaiting you on the other side from other parts of the continent. Please join us again. Welcome back to Watching Business Incorporated right here on Channels Television. We'll get into the markets now, and today we're looking at the Naira. Yes, obviously, because it's one of the most important things happening and affecting everything. Even the NATO strike is connected to this, because the more the value of the Naira drops, the more expensive diesel costs, and that is at the top of their request this afternoon. But let's look at the market numbers, beginning with the NGX before we get into the Forex market. There we see that the NGX at intraday looking good, really good there at 0.2.9% at intraday, and crossed the 106,000 index points. The NGX is back, giving us excitement. However, for the JSE, that's for South Africa, if we could have the numbers on the screen right there. For South Africa, it's down 0.21% in the red, and still going away from that 74,000 which South Africa is known for. So we see a mixed one. Let's see Egypt now and see what that's looking like at this time. Egypt is in the green, 0.71% at 29,333.37. Kenya closed on Friday at 91, just 91, going further away from the 100,000. They closed in the red right there. Now, let's settle in Nigeria, see what's going on there. We have our guest joining us, Bosun Bembe, is a fixed income trader with the Access Bank, and he's going to give us the latest. Just before I came on, I learned that the Naira has dropped again, about 1,007 for the parallel market, while the pound has hit about 2,000 Naira for the pound. But another worrying thing, obviously, is what Fitch ratings said. They said that the proposed foreign currency gateway bank announced by the central bank may have a negative impact on the liquidity of Nigerian bank. But let's talk to Bosu now. He's out there trading and dealing with customers, so he can tell us first-hand information. Hi, Bosu. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. Please, first of all, give us updates. What's going on with the Naira against the dollar, against the pound? What's it looking at this time?
So the Naira, what we've seen there's been a lot of volatility in recent time. Though the previous week we saw improvement in the turnover, just like when the government mentioned that we received about 1.8 billion. But in the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of volatility. Even as we speak, the official market, we've seen heat crossing as 1600 levels, and even the NIFEX is closing at around 1574. So What the CBN is trying to do is to actually entice the foreign portfolio investors, but most of them, because of the movement in the naira, which is caused by a lot of demand. So the forces of willing buyer, willing seller. So we have a lot of willing buyer and a few seller, which the law of demand and supply. When you have more demand than supply, then the price will start going up, which is what has affected naira. We've not been seeing the supply. But this week we have NTB auction. The previous week there was an NTB auction where what CBN did was to actually work with DMO to upsize it to 1 trillion. But this week we have about 262 billion maturing on Thursday. So that will be an auction on Wednesday. So expectation is that will be the DMO will sell more than what is maturing. And if the rate close higher than the 19% at the auction, we might start to see this hot money, though is a temporary way of actually stabilizing the naira by attracting the FPI to bring in the hot fund, which will stay at least to cushion in this volatility for like a year. So maybe by the time we see the result of the auction on Wednesday, we might see dollar maybe coming from the foreign portfolio investors to the market. But as it is now, the volatility, it continues, even despite various policy by the CBN.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, we see the CBN making a lot of efforts. We want a flexible rate. They've given it to us, willing buyer, willing seller rates. They have allowed the IMTOs to sell at their own rates, no restrictions right there, So why does it seem so difficult? Is there something, or is there a special demand at this time? First, they said it's a school fees period. And then they said, the diaspora guys came for Christmas and are going back. Is there anything that's constituting the demand at this time?
I think the demand is just you and I. So most of the things, our taste of foreign things is a whole lot. So, and we import virtually key things. So, and when you are paying for this thing, you are paying in dollars, not naira. And if you are importing and you are getting less from people buying from you, so because we export less, that's the reason why the demand keeps soaring. So what the CBN has done, at least what I think are working. Before now you see people, instead of keeping their investment in naira, they start converting it to US dollar. But by the time the last NTB auction, we saw rate as at 19%. So if the rate keeps going up again, maybe you've seen interest rate as maybe 20, 23, 24%. Maybe this will reduce the demand by locals to convert their pennies in naira to USD. So, but in terms of the demand is still there. So, and it's not the only monetary side that can solve this problem. That has to be the fiscal side has to come into. So CBN has done a lot. Last week there are some circular that came out on ensuring that if people are collecting PTA is not in cash. It has to be credited into an account. So is that debit or credit account? So these are ways in which CBN is trying to reduce this volatility which we are seeing on naira. But it appears a lot of work has to be done because we've not seen the impact of some of these policies. As CBN is coming with policy, the rate keeps going up.
Yeah, keeps going up. I mean, hitting 1,500, 1,600 in the official market, that is very scary. But how much, talking about expectations now, when we compare the last auction to the one coming up this week, how much FPI do you think will come in? Because, I mean, that's one way of aiding the naira.
I think the last auction, the information came into the market on time that the DMO upsized from about 400 billion to 1 trillion. But this one, we've not gotten any information. But the filler is that will be an oversubscription, and DMO will sell more than the amount on offer. So the last auction, most of the foreign portfolio guys that came in, so they went for the auction at a rate of maybe 20-22%. So they didn't really win some of their bid, so which was the reason why most of them, they still have their naira, and most of them, they are looking at, okay, where would the rate close? I think maybe 19% discount is not so attractive for them. Maybe they are looking at 20 to maybe 24%. So maybe we just have to allow the rate to go up to entice this guy, because it's by getting flows from them that I think this naira will stabilize.
Okay, so please help us to understand what Fitch Ratings is saying, talking about the gateway bank proposed by the CBN governor, that it could have negative impact on liquidity. Help us understand that.
Yeah, I think what Fitch is saying is because the objective of that CBN policy is to actually have an oversight of the liquidity, dollar liquidity. So you have most banks, they are facing one corresponding banking, so CBN can have an oversight. However, because of the traffic and because of the volume of transaction involved, and not something that is going to happen in the short term, it's one of the mid strategy that CBN is looking at. Okay, maybe it's not something that's going to happen now. Maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, that's when they will come up with this strategy. So it's more like, okay, all my transaction is going through one corresponding banking. With that, I can have an overview of what is happening in terms of liquidity for dollar liquidity for bank. But I think just like as Fitch has said, if it is not well structured, if it's not well done, it's going to have negative impact on dollar liquidity for banks, because some corresponding bank or offshore bank, they might not want to face the gateway bank that CBN might want bank to use, so which might have impact on banks' FCY liquidity. So, but if it's well done and it's not something that is happening in the next maybe 3 months, it's going to take time, and it's done properly, I think this illiquidity negative impact that it could have on liquidity can be mitigated. But if it's done is not done properly, it's not planned, it's going to have impact on banks' liquidity, because some offshore bank will not want to face that bank, and they will cut the lines that they have for Nigerian banks.
All right, well, we hope that the CBN, of course, will put things in place, structures in place, before they move on. Just before we let you go now, where do you see the naira ending up this week? You have given us a bit of hope because of the auction coming, especially if the yields, go up. How do you see the naira ending this week?
This week, I see the naira will be at today now it has entered, is going to about 1600. But if at the auction there's a bond auction happening now, which will, by the time the result comes out, we have 7-year and a 10-year bond, 1.25 trillion each. So by the time the result comes out, if the yield on that instrument, if it's as high as maybe 19-20%, so that is signaling what will happen in the NTB auction on Wednesday. So if the auction closes higher, I think we will see the dollar from the FPI. But this bond is not attracting the foreign portfolio guys. No, the FPI, they are not ready to stay for 7 years or 10 years. So they're just looking for, they're just doing carry trade. Take the money, then go out.
Portfolio investors, very hot money right there. But thank you so much for sharing your views with us this afternoon, Boss Obembe, fixed income trader with Access Bank.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's the reality of the naira at this time in the official market, heading to 1,600. Very scary right there. Can we all decide to do local, eat local, wear local? I don't know. I guess that could help. All right, let's go to other markets outside Nigeria now. We see in Asia that the Shanghai is in the green, 1.56% at 2,910.54. And Australia is also in the green right there at the close of trade. The Nikkei is losing some of that steam it gathered last week. It hit 38, returned to the 38 level, which it hasn't done in a long time, but a bit of drop today at the close of trade. Kospi is, however, on the flip side, 1.19%, 2,680.26, while the Hang Seng is deeply in the red, 1.13%, 16,155.51. A little bit of drivers there. The People's Bank of China, yesterday, they held the key policy rate steady, which was expected. Markets reassess when the U.S. Federal Reserve might start easing its monetary policy. And also China's central bank has said that it was holding the rate unchanged at 2.5% on 500 billion yuan. That's about 69.51 billion. billion worth of one-year medium-term lending facility right there. So that's for Asia. And then we move to Europe now and see what's going on right there, where we have Ekrem is joining us to tell us about what's going on. Another strike looming in that area. And recession is right there. You know, the UK is already in technical recession. I hope we'll have Juliana back soon. I think on Wednesday we should have her to bring us up to date what's going on right there. But Germany's Verdi union has called on Lufthansa ground staff to strike from tomorrow. And that's the latest escalation. 2 weeks ago, we talked about strike in Germany. And now this escalation is in a wave of industrial disputes, which have hit the country's aviation industry already this year. As I said 2 weeks ago, we were on this. Now it's another one. But Ekrem is there. Ekrem, good afternoon. What's this about again?
Thanks for having me, Ini. The German service union Verdi has called a strike of Lufthansa employees from 4 a.m. on Tuesday to 7 a.m. on Wednesday for 27 hours. Major international airports across Germany are set to be affected. Lufthansa said that around 900 out of 1,000 scheduled flights have been cancelled. Now that is expected to affect around 100,000 passengers nationwide. German airports were hit by a wave of strikes earlier this month when security staff walked out demanding higher pay. Over 1,000 flights were cancelled across 11 major airports on February 1st, impacting over 200,000 passengers. One of Europe's major transit hubs, Frankfurt Airport, had been heavily impacted by the strike action, with all passenger boarding cancelled. Again, this time, the airports that will be affected are Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, Berlin, Düsseldorf, Cologne and Stuttgart. Lufthansa Executive Board member Michael Niggemann said the strike was unfortunate, as the German carrier had made a far-reaching offer during talks, which Verdi had rejected, and it would inconvenience customers and staff alike.
So if they've rejected the offer, what exactly do they want as the Lufthansa workers?
Well, pinched by inflation over the last years and in the wake of the COVID pandemic, Lufthansa workers are demanding higher wages to cope with the cost of living. Their union, Verdi, is demanding a wage increase of 12.5% for 25,000 ground staff workers, or at least 500 euros a month more over a 12-month period, plus a one-off payment of 3,000 euros to offset inflation. On the other hand, Lufthansa last week increased its offer to a 10% pay rise, which was rejected by 96% of employees who don't feel their wages match inflation in Germany, which was at 5.9% last year and 6.9% in 2022, but has now fallen considerably to around 3%.
All right, let's take a look at the markets now. What are we expecting?
Well, Ini, stocks had pulled back Friday after another hotter-than-expected inflation reading, this time from the January Producer Price Index. Investors' focus this week will be on the minutes of the Federal Reserve meeting from last month, which is scheduled for release on Wednesday. Last week's data showed both U.S. producer prices and consumer prices increased more than expected in January. Now, traders and investors expect that stickiness in inflation would raise the prospects of a delayed start to the Fed's rate cuts. Traders now expect that June would be the starting point of the easing cycle compared with March at the beginning of the year.
All right, Ekrem, thank you so much. We hope to get updates on that strike again tomorrow. Now, let's head to the African continent, where the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Nigeria, has launched Project 774 LG Connectivity. Now, 774 is a number of local government areas in the country, and it's an initiative designed to address limited internet and digital access by connecting all local governments in the country, 774 of them, their secretariats across Nigeria, to the internet. The minister, Dr. Bosun Tijani, was a guest on our Sunrise Daily earlier today, said the project, which will be co-anchored by Nigerian Communications Satellite Limited and Galaxy Backbone, is aligned with the President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda and the ministry's strategic blueprint. The target is to foster inclusive development and access to digital public infrastructure in government offices located all over the country, including the most remote areas of the country that may have been previously underserved or unserved. There's a lot of work right there for the minister, especially when you talk about the remote areas, getting infrastructure there. We're looking for power. We haven't seen where it's gone to, and now we are talking internet. Very interesting one, and I heard the minister in the morning tell Chamberlain and Malkwet to say, you can call me back on this and follow up. So we will certainly do that and hold him to his words. Now, outside Nigeria now, the Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development of Zimbabwe, Mr. Anxious Masuka, has reiterated the government's plans to sell water to South Africa with an initial 15 million cubic liters set to be piped every month to Messina. The pipeline is set to be constructed from Beit Bridge Massive Zohi Dam. The Zohi Dam is the country's 11th largest dam with the capacity of 133 million cubic liters. Water is reportedly being released from the dam to recharge an alluvial aquifer for the lower Mozingwane River, where water is abstracted from boreholes and well points in the river and on the banks to feed a few but large commercial farms under citrus production. And Musaka was addressing provincial ministers from some of the country's 10 provinces, which it hosted, to appeal for their support and management of agricultural projects. South Africa already imports water from Lesotho, which is a tiny mountainous kingdom that has a large amount of water. And South Africa has a water deficit, particularly in Johannesburg, which is located in the rain shadow of the highlands. Still in Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan have supported Kenya's move to offer end-to-end logistics services, even as clearing and forwarding agents protest the move that potentially locks them out of business. In the latest efforts to make Northern Corridor more efficient and serve landlocked countries to compete with Dar es Salaam port, officials of the three countries met with their Kenyan counterparts and agreed on a number of issues to make them use Navisha Inland Container Depot. Kenya Ports Authority had opposed the idea, but it's been given mandate to offer end-to-end logistics services after government completed procurement of more than 250 railway wagons and entered into agreement with some transporters to offer last-mile services through a tender advertised sometime last year. Kenya Ports Authority have opposed the idea, but this has already gone beyond them, unfortunately, at this time. Now let's head to the crypto space and see what's going on there. Looking at prices, of course, to begin with. We know that Bitcoin, the market is still greedy from last week. In fact, for this afternoon, it's gone up to 75 over 100. So it's a very greedy market. And I guess that's because of the price of Bitcoin is still on the rise. Talking about the price of Bitcoin, it hit $52,430.61, and that's up 0.58%. Ethereum is also following in that sentiment. Right there, we see Ethereum is at 2,919.15 after it added 3.25%. BNB is, however, on the flip side, it's down 1.37%, costing $353.30. Cardano is negative. XRP is negative at this time. Now we have Gilbert joining us now to tell us what's driving some of this sentiment. Hi, Gilbert. Happy Monday to you.
Yeah, wishing you same.
Yeah. So what's going on now? What are the drivers now? I know some people have started talking about halving, but I guess it's too early for that. But what's the current state now? What are the drivers?
Okay, the fact that people are already talking about halving means that we could price halving in with what's happening to the price. But then if we are looking at what's driving the recent price, in our last conversation last week, Wednesday, I told you about the present market structures at that time that could drive Bitcoin to break out above even that 53,000 and can strike in more fear, more FOMO. Persons who have fear of missing out in the market. But then aside the technical structures, which will drive investors to buy, we also have the ETF. So in ETF inflow, so many institutions have been consistently buying. As at last week Monday, we saw over 493 inflow. And not just these institutions that had approval for ETF want a piece of the pie. We also saw banks in the US also that want to offer ETF services as well. And the SEC are just involved all of a sudden. So there is an unlimited demand for the limited supply of Bitcoin, which is available. So the ETF inflow and also the market structure is really causing sentiments to change, and everybody wants a piece of Bitcoin at this time.
It might be. I hope it's not too late when we see the price. And some people are even saying that it's going to hit 69,000 even before the halving.
It's very, very possible. And there are a couple of signs that we look at can really tell you that Bitcoin isn't stopping anytime soon. First of all, is the institutional investors' interest. We have seen consistent inflow. For about 13 straight days, there were constant inflow of money through the ETF. Even the banks want in. The second is unlimited demand. Unlike the traditional gold, Bitcoin has a specific finite number of 21 million that can never be in existence. So theoretically, this is scarcity, which will increase the value of Bitcoin. And meanwhile, let me give you another example. On Monday last week, a Bitcoin miners produced about 1,050 BTC, which was about $51 million worth of Bitcoin. But that same day, Bitcoin ETF issuers bought about over $10,000, 10,000 BTC, and its value was over 493. So you can see there is an unlimited demand keep being priced on the limited supply of Bitcoin, which is available. Another is actually gold is losing its shine at the moment. I know gold remains the biggest ETF, which is out there, but if you notice, there have been an outflow from the gold ETF market. The question is, where do we think this outflow is going to? It's coming to Bitcoin at the moment because it's what's hot, it's what is trendy, and one of the best ways to make money in the marketplace is being early to trend. So not just retail investors, institutions all over the world are also getting ready to have a great piece of the pie.
Well, I hope institutional investors will not drive away the smaller investors. Everyone should have a share, And then halving is just in April. We're counting down to it. But what do you see happening? We're getting to the end of February now, getting into March, which is just about a month. What do you see happening, days and weeks to that April 19?
Okay, first of all, I think institutional investors will increase the cost of entry. So for the average young man who is out there, the price for you to pay to go in is going to be more than it should have been for you. And then typically, they are going to increase prices up. This is why, while I've always been on this show, I've always talked about margin of safety. And that was why I was like 24K were good places, because that was institutional level entry. But the major thing for retail guys who are listening is just to understand that they need a margin of safety. And this margin of safety means getting into the market before Bitcoin hits all-time high. While we look out for the halving that will be coming in, we are going to have a lot of price surge will come into other cryptocurrencies. But the good thing is for persons to be ahead of the entire crowd. All of this will form a trend that will be enough to fool novice investors. But I'm not really talking about causing trend in most solid cryptos. There will be other lesser cryptocurrencies that can easily start new trend, and everybody will FOMO into the market and can cause a blow off top. So it's always a good thing you position ahead of time, and also not to come in when institutions have already increased the cost of entry.
So is it too late now for the individual investors?
No, I still think it's still early. It's not late to go into the market right now.
We're doing 52 now.
We haven't even hit the all-time high of the last bull market. We haven't. But any moment from now, we will hit. And once that happens, typically we always have a blow off top. And that is when everybody actually out there who knows little or nothing about the market always want to come in. So right now is the time where you should enter to have that margin of safety, because we'll get to all-time high and then create a new all-time high.
Okay, if you say so. But all of this might be threatened by recession in the Eurozone.
Okay, yeah. Recession has struck the world's top economy, even though the US seems to be defying this expectation. But this is it. For those who understand history, when bad times strike or prevail, the world has always turned to gold and silver. But Bitcoin is digital gold. It's gold of the internet, which has more better, like we know gold is scarce, but we don't know the total number of gold that is available. But we could say this for Bitcoin. The same time, Bitcoin is something that is more transferable. You could send it in real time, via the internet. So gold, Bitcoin, which is the digital gold at the moment, is more of the gold for our generation. And then what we have always seen is during bad times, during recessions, investors always flock towards gold and silver. So the thing is, even if the US hits a recession, which so far I think Powell is doing a good job. So far how he has been able to fly the economy. But even if the US go into recession, where do we think investors will be running into? It has to be Bitcoin. And so far you could see with even gold losing its shine. It's losing its shine because investors are seeing Bitcoin to be a more favorable destination than gold. But understand that there are some old money institutional investors who will always choose gold over Bitcoin, like Peter Cherf. So even while that is the case, we still have a Michael Saylor, who is also an old institutional investor, who still chooses the digital gold, which is Bitcoin, over the old traditional gold.
Yeah, good.
So even if we see...
It's good you said that, because I was going to remind you that there are still some people who are traditional, and gold remains gold for life.
It's the same way. It's the same way even in the new digital market, which is crypto. There are certain persons who don't invest in any crypto that isn't Bitcoin. They just believe that other cryptocurrencies, they are risky and it's not something even worth the time. We always see different investors have their preference and their strategy, and which I respect that at the end of the day. But the digital gold, which is Bitcoin, I think is about having the shine in the present recession that the world is being struck on.
All right, Gilbert Jokpata, financial markets analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so is it gold or is it Bitcoin for you? Which one, especially as halving draws near April 19th? But that's where we draw the curtains. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Incorporated this afternoon. Of course, another episode comes tomorrow, but there'll be Business Morning at 10 a.m. But you can always watch anyone you want on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/channels web. Look for Business Morning or Business Incorporated and you get the full show. Thank you so much. I'm Amy John McCoy. Enjoy the rest of your day.